Are you looking to fulfill your dream of starting your own business? Well, a recent survey shows that now might be the perfect time to do just that.
The creation of small businesses continues to be a critical factor in today's economy. And if you're an entrepreneur at heart, keep watching because Heather actually spoke with some experts to tell us how to start that process.
Did you know that small businesses make up 99.7% of all U.S. businesses? Well, now is the time for entrepreneurs to take their tax refund and use it to launch their new business. Small business expert Susan Solovic and Sage North America's Executive Vice President of Marketing, Gaby Boko, are here with us this morning with some great information and tips to help you get started. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Now, what are some tips that you might give somebody that is just starting their new business?
Well, actually, I would say first to do a little self-analysis and see whether or not you have the right stuff. So being your own boss is not for everybody, and that's okay. But, you know, are you a self-starter? Are you willing to work on your own? Because it's kind of isolating. You know, are you willing to make the commitment and put in the hours to make it a success? But most importantly, are you really a salesperson? Because when you start that business, the customers aren't going to flock in the door. You are the product and service, and you have got to be willing to go out there and sell it. And that's something not everybody's comfortable with.
So having a great idea for a business is not enough anymore. We need to actually have that sales drive in us. Now, we're hearing that 2015 is a great year to start a small business. Why is that?
You know, 2015 is already shaping up to be a really interesting year across the country for things that are happening both in communities and in government. But I think what's really important is that there are more women than men that are starting businesses right now. And a lot more Generation Xers, that 30 to 50 range, who are saying, I don't want to necessarily be professional anymore. I want to go off and do something myself. So there's a lot of opportunity that's available. And there's a lot of change that can be driven by small businesses in their communities, and a lot of things that are coming up with things like national elections and local elections that can really drive changes in small business success. So 2015 is going to be a really great year. Jump in.
I love it. Well, you know, I know a lot of people who have maybe some hobbies that they're really quite good at. You know, when do we know when it's time to turn that hobby maybe into a small business?
Well, if you have that hobby and you're good at it, chances are you're selling a little bit on the side, right? Little part-time business going on for a little extra cash. You know it's time to turn that, or at least consider turning that hobby into a business when it gets to the point that it's interfering with your 9-to-5 job. So is it really growing, and is it time to turn it into a full-time enterprise? But then also think about your joy factor. You do that hobby because you really love it and it brings you joy. If you turn that into your job, are you still going to love it, or is it just going to be a chore and you're not going to be in love with it anymore?
Well, and that's great advice. And, you know, we just had our final date for tax season, so a lot of us are getting those tax returns back. Tell us how we can use that to maybe start that new business.
Well, the first thing you should probably do, Heather, is have a plan, because you don't want to use your money and use your tax return unwisely. A lot of small businesses use their own personal finances and their own savings to get their businesses going. So a tax return can be a great augmentation to that personal investment. But you're going to need to go talk to a banker, because you're going to need additional capital. It's about 1 to 3 years before you're really going to be able to start to do more than just pay yourself and start to see success. What else, Susan?
Well, I think that your good point about talking to a banker and advisors is so critical. And you also need to use that money in a very, very smart way. Yeah. You don't want to blow it all on a website or some equipment, because it's going to be that working capital that you're going to need to get the business going. And also think about your own personal living expenses. Gaby mentioned that, you know, you're not going to maybe see a profit in your business for the first several years. So how are you going to pay your living expenses if that company isn't churning out cash right from the start? So you're probably going to be dipping into personal assets, or maybe you have a spouse or a domestic partner who will also be able to help augment it. You may have to downsize your lifestyle a bit. So those are all factors to consider.
Well, I think it's great that you're laying out for us exactly what we need to think about if we are interested in starting that small business. And ladies, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
And stay where you are. The Morning Blend will be right back.